How's it going, Scrub Gamers? We're back with another video here at ScrubGames, and once again, we are here with the next installment of my Understand How to Build series, where we go over all leaders in a given set to help you understand how to build them to suit you and your playstyle. Now, for this one, we're going to go over the Wat Tambor leader, so if you're interested in that, then stay tuned, and also don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep updated with my channel. And also remember that you can click the notification bell to get alerts when my videos do drop, so you can watch them there and then, or at a later time that benefits you best. Now that we have all that out of the way, let's jump in and help you understand how to build Wat Tambor. So, first things first, we're going to start with the leader. Star Wars Unlimited is a leader-based game, meaning you can't really play without one. And they are what you're going to usually build your deck around, because each one either has a very generic kind of effect or very specific one. So it's always best to understand what leader does and how it functions before you start building a deck around it. So for this leader, Wat Tambor, he is Wat Tambor Union Tech Foreman, so he's part of the Separatist Alliance. I think it's the Alliance. And then he comes in as well with the Command and Villainy traits, so green and black, which is a pretty good one. So he's got a built-in ramp if you want to go for a ramp strategy with him. He also has the trait Separatist Official, which don't give you a huge benefit. Separatist probably more than Official, but currently, as far as I'm aware, there's not the hugest benefit, because Separatist is a good trait to have if you're with Dooku, because it can potentially add some exploit to it when you want to play it. And you can deploy quite early at 5 resources, so that's usually turn 4, or quicker if you ramp. And then when he does deploy, he comes down at 3/6. He's basically got the same deploying stats as Han Solo from set 2, so pretty good power and health, quite nice deploy. And his effect is quite similar in both the leader area and ground arena, because his effect is both in both places. If a friendly unit was defeated this phase, you can give a unit +2/2 to their stats for this phase. And the only difference in the effects is how they trigger. Whereas in the lead area, you got to tap him as the cost, and then when he's deployed, you have to attack to trigger it. So it's just different triggers with the same effect, and that's pretty good, because when you deploy, on your deployed turn, you can essentially give the same unit +4/4 boost, which could be very good in either doing a load of damage to your opponent's base, or making something huge to take out something bigger on your opponent's board, or even making it, because it's 5 resources, an even bigger benefit of Overwhelm Barrage, being to give a unit +4/4, then Overwhelm Barrage to make a unit have 6/6 essentially for the turn, and deal 6+ whatever power it had as damage towards your opponent's entire board. So that could be pretty cool. And also, don't forget that with every leader, it has a showcase. And remember that the art is subjective as well, so if you can like it or you can hate it, but the only opinion that really matters about showcase, and that really matters in total, is yours. So if you like it, fair enough. If you hate it, fair enough. It's basically all of your opinion. You shouldn't worry about anyone else's. And Wat Tambor is actually pretty cool. Like, you see him, he looks a little like he's a different view of him. From sat down, you actually look at him rather than basically look at him looking down on you. Is him looking potentially at you, but it looks pretty cool. Not the most amazing, but then is a character that's not the most popular, I would say. I'm not actually sure, because I'm not that I don't really know I have the best knowledge regarding Star Wars, but I have good enough, I feel. But yeah, it's a pretty good showcase. So now we're going to go into some of the basics of the game for any brand new players, so they have as much help as possible to help them build a deck. But if you're more of a veteran player and you don't need this, then feel free to use the timestamps below in the video's description to skip forward to any parts that you're after, as they're all noted for ease of relevance or reference. Yeah, I think it's reference. So let's check out the more basic stuff now. So along with your leader, you also have bases. And this is the ever mandatory piece that you need along with your leader, as is how you the part of how you win or lose the game, and also provides you your other aspects for play. Now, there are 2 types of bases as of set 3. There are the rare bases, which have a lower health total, but can compensate for that by having an effect, be it an epic action, a continuous effect, or an effect that triggers at a specific point. The nearest type of base are just the common bases. Now, these are all currently 30 health bases with no effects, and common bases are all the same in terms of health, and the only difference being their aspect, art, name, and location. Now, as a set 3, there's nothing that benefits from a base having a specific name or location, So for these ones, you just choose your preferred art in the aspect you want, really. That's it. But for rare bases, so we're going to have, here are the 8 rare bases we have, because there are currently 8 as a set 3, because set 2 didn't have any, but we have the first 4 being the top row, which were the ones from set 1, and in the second lot, which were the ones from set 3 being the bottom row. Now, the set 1 bases are more of the standard format, which are all often being used in standard play, bar the Cunning one, whereas the set 3 ones are more built for the Twins Suns format blind. So with the top ones, the first lot of ones, they all had the same amount of health, being 25, and they came with epic action. So you have to you have to basically spend an action to be able to trigger them with some useful effects like Security Complex giving you a shield on a non-leader unit, Energy Conversion Lab beyond the play cycle with Ambush, Target Town allowing you to do 3 damage to a damaged non-leader unit, and then City giving a non-leader unit -4 power for the turn. So they all required an action, and they all had the similarities in that they didn't really affect the leader. Now, the strongest one was Energy Conversion Lab because you could play out 6 or less, remember, still paying the cost, and give Ambush being one of the best skills in the game, whereas City barely still play because it's not as great compared to the rest. Now, for set 3, we do get new ones, but as I said, they're more Twin Suns format focused, but you still run them in the standard format. And they come with different things. Like you've got Petronaki Arena, the yellow one, and Pal City, the blue one, being the ones that are more continuous effects, which affect your leader. So while you control your leader, they get a stat boost. The blue one giving a health boost, while the yellow one giving a power boost. Now, these get more benefit in Twin Suns because if you got 2 leaders in that one, so you get more benefit out of that. Whereas the other 2 bases trigger when your leader deploys. So you got Droid Manufacturer being the lowest health rare base in the game at 24, and Shadow Collector Camp being the same as the set 1 ones at 25 health. Now these both have an effect with triggers when you deploy a leader. And remember, in Twin Suns, we have 2 leaders. You can trigger these twice, rather than just have trigger them once like the rest. And Droid Manufactory gives you 2 droid tokens, which it's good for both sides because in set 3 you get both new skills of Exploit and Coordinate needing 3 or more units on board to trigger that effect, and Exploit allowing you to defeat your units on board that make something you're going to play cheaper. So having 2 battle droid tokens means you can make something cheaper by killing off those tokens, or have those units on board to basically trigger Coordinate. Very handy there. And then you got Shadow Collector Camp, just allowing you to draw a card when you deploy your leader. Now, drawing this game isn't amazing, so it's not the biggest boost compared to how it might be for other games, but it's still a pretty decent boost if you feel. So normally, if you feel that one of these rare bases will suit you for your deck, you just play them. Otherwise, you just go with the common base, because with the common base, like I said, they're all the same in terms of stats. So you just pick whichever one you like best in the aspect you want, and these are my preferred personal aspects. Bases for these ones. I like these arts more than most of them, but sometimes they do change depending with the leader. Sometimes I have a specific kind of base I want with the leader, but these are my favorite looking ones. So that's the basis. Now we go on to the next part of the video. So next we're going to cover the aspects. There are 6 in total in this game. There are the 4 color aspects, which are on all leaders and bases, with these being the Vigilance being the blue one, Command being the green one, Aggression being the red one, and Cunning being the yellow one. Then there are the 2 aspects which represent the light and dark sides of the game, and are also on all leaders but not bases. Now these are Villainy, the black aspect, which stands for Control and Destruction, featuring the antagonists of the Star Wars universe. And then there's Heroism, which is the white aspect, which stands for Peace and Justice, featuring the protagonists of the Star Wars series. Now, these 6 aspects all have a specific style of play. With Heroism, you have a more rebellious effect, making for a very aggressive side of the game. And with Villainy, you have more destructive effects, making for a more controlling side of the game. Now, you always have one of these 2 aspects on your leader, and you also have one, being the Heroism and Villainy, and then you always also have one of the other 4 color aspects on your leader and also on your base. And these will have a specific style of play, and what that style of play is going to be as follows. So for Vigilance, which is the blue one, this one allows you to play defensively with an ability to heal, remove dangerous units from play, and protect your base from attacks. And this aspect is perfect for anybody who likes to play patiently and endure lots of relentless attacks from your opponent. So if you like that very patient play style, then Vigilance is going to be a very good one for you. Now, next we have Command, being the green one, which is what Dooku is in. And this one allows you to accelerate your resources and call upon lots of units or strengthen the units you already have in play. And this is a perfect choice for any player who wants to overwhelm their opponent with massive board presence. So if that's the kind of thing you want, then you already got that on Dooku, so there we go. And then next one we have is Red, which is Aggression. Now this is kind of like the name suggests. It's an aspect which wants to attack with maximum efficiency and dish out loads of damage. And this is a great aspect for anybody who would prefer fast-paced, fiery playstyles that like to break through defenses and go for victory at any cost. So like all about throwing out damage willy-nilly to bases or units. So if you like very aggressive playstyles, then Aggression is a good one for you. And that brings us to the last one, being Cunning. So this is a very toolboxy kind of aspect, because it wants to adapt to any situation on the fly with powerful immediate effects, and have lots of tools for disrupting your opponent's game plan. Now this aspect is a perfect fit for anybody who prefers to respond quickly to problems and have an answer for almost anything your opponent throws at you. So it's like also like a jack of all trades kind of aspect. So if that kind of appeals to you, then that could be a way for you to play. Now, with your leader and base, together they'll give you 3 aspects, and these will make for the following aspect combinations. So your leader is always going to give you the Villainy and Command traits, being black and green. Now, depending on what base you use, you have one of 4 different combinations. So you either go for with a blue base, you go for green-blue. With a green base, you go for double green. With red base, you go for green-red, and then with yellow base, you go for green-yellow. And these also have specific kind of benefits into it, because you have benefits on the aspects, and depending on how your leader functions, you might want to have certain like a certain base with it to go for a certain aspect combination. So those are the 4 different aspect combinations, which we'll go over in a bit when we pass through the basic information. Now, this brings us to the last part of the aspects, being the aspect penalty. Now here, I've created this handy dandy guide to better show you how it works, as I want to improve on this series as best I can. Now now in this game, you can put any card in your deck, but when it comes to actually playing it, then the aspect penalty comes into the frame. So see, whenever you go to play a card, if any aspect on the card you want to play doesn't match any of the aspects among your leader or base, then you have to pay an additional 2 resources per aspect that doesn't match. So with this leader base combo, as an example, being Wat Tambor with a blue base, you have access to the black, blue, and green aspects. Now, if you want to play a card where all the aspects on it match what is on your leader or base, then you play it for the cost print on the card, and we have an example here in the top box. If you want to play any cards with this base leader combo, and your card has any of the aspect combos there, being like any of the individual ones or dual ones, then you pay it just for its printed cost. That's it. Now, if on the card you want to play, you have one aspect that doesn't match that was on your leader and/or base, then you have to pay an additional 2 resources on top of the printed cost of the card. So that would make a card that would usually cost 3 a 5 cost card, because it's technically out of aspect. Also note that any aspect only provides just one of itself, meaning if you want to play, say a blue Vigilance aspect will only provide you 1 Vigilance aspect, meaning if you want to play a card that has 2 Vigilance aspects on it, then you only have 1 amongst your leader and base. Then if you would need to pay an additional 2 resources, you don't have that second Vigilance aspect. And examples of this with the leader base combo shown on board, on the screen, are in the middle box. So if you want to play with this leader base combo, any card with the aspects as shared, like shown in the second box, you have to pay an extra 1 or 2 resources on top to play it out. Now, if you want to play a card in which both aspects do not match what's on your leader base, then you have to pay a whopping 4 extra resources on top of this card's cost, and this would make a 3 cost card in this case cost you 7. And once again, the examples for this are shown in the last box at the bottom. Now, do remember that while the aspect penalty does make a card that more costly, if you play it out of aspect, then sometimes sometimes a card is worth playing for extra cost, essentially. And a great example of this are great examples of this are the set 1 double aspect events, which are all named after their respective aspect, and they offer 4 effects, which you can resolve any 2 of them in whatever order you choose, and they have been played in competitive outside of double aspect leader based combos. So remember that even though the aspect quality does make things a bit more costly, sometimes there are cards that are worth playing out of aspect because their effect is just that good. So don't think that just because a card's out of aspect you shouldn't play it. There are benefits to playing cards out of aspect, even because the cost doesn't outweigh the benefit of that card. Now, the last part, before we go look at each aspect combo's benefits, we're going to talk about the ratios. Because like in all card games, you can play a certain number of copies of any given card in your deck, and these vary between each card game, and for Star Wars Unlimited, you can include up to 3 copies of any given card in your deck. So, now there are benefits to how many copies of a card you can include in your deck, and we're going to go over when you should include, ideally, 1, 2, or 3 copies of any given card. So first of all, we're going to cover 3 copies of a card, because this is the ratio to help maximize the likelihood the desired card will be in your hand when needed, and examples of this being cards you can play on the first turn, or cards you want to see multiples of over the course of the game. And here, for the example of this one, I've put down Poggle the Lesser, because this is a card that is really nice to play turn 1 and help set up to make sure you've got something on your board that you can always ram into one of your opponent's cards to make sure that basic units being defeated, and ideally one that you don't really care about. Because Poggle is one you can play turn 1, pretty decent stats at 1 power and 4 health, so you can stay there quite reasonably. And whenever you play another unit, you can exhaust him to create a battle droid token. So those battle droid tokens are then 1/1 units that you can then use to just ram into one of your opponent's units, put a bit of damage on one of their units while also defeating one of your own. So that way you can trigger Wat to basically then boost up one of your other units you've got on board, maybe the one you've played to trigger Poggle, and then make it an extra 2/2 stronger to either cause a lot of damage to your opponent's base or take out something a lot easier than it might have been able to before. Because sometimes you get units that are quite weak but bulky, like Poggle here. So this could be a perfect one for that. Now, for 2 copies of a card, this is usually a ratio for cards that aren't great to draw early in the game, but you want to still go through multiple copies over the course of the game. And examples of those being boss cards or high costing cards. So a great example I put in every video is Rival's Fall, because this is a card that can instantly defeat any unit. And when it comes to events like that defeat a unit, they normally have a more of a restriction the cheaper they are. Because the cheaper they are, more restriction, but the more costly they are, the lesser restriction they have. So you've got some events like Takedown, which can take out any unit, but it's got to have 5 or less health, or Fellow Dragon, which can hit any non-leader unit as long as it's got 5 or more power. So they have restrictions because they cost a lot less at 4, but Rivals 4 is one of those ones that costs a lot more at 6, which is quite expensive, but defeats any unit, even leaders, which is quite rare in the game. So this is one that you might not want to have early, where it could brick in your hand, and you don't want to keep hold of it waiting for it to be used. So you might want to have less copies, so when you need it, you can draw into it, and hopefully use it when you need. And that brings the last one being 1 copy card. Now this is usually the ratio for cards that are added to a deck specifically in order to counter a specific situation or function. An example of this has been the card restock on screen, which is added to decks in order to keep hard control decks at bay. Because when it comes to hard control, as the name suggests, they just want to focus on controlling the game, and they don't really worry about putting through damage. They want to just keep control of the game, make sure they're always in control of it. And how they usually win with that, because the only way you can win is by doing damage to base, is they'll wait until you deck out, meaning that you have no longer any cards in your deck to draw. And in this game, when you deck out, you don't instantly lose like you might in some games. Instead, you start taking damage to your base. And for every card you can't draw, you take 3 damage. So when you go to draw your 2 cards, if you can't draw one of them, you take 3 damage. If you can't draw both of them, that's 6 damage. So they usually rely on that kind of damage to win the game by making it so you can't draw cards, and then you end up dying from that damage where they're controlling you. You can't try to get through, and then you die to that deck out damage. But by having this restock, it allows you to put 4 cards from your discard back to the bottom of your deck in a random order, and with how the game functions, you can put itself back as one of those 4 cards. You can kind of loop this over and over again, and this prevents that kind of deck out damage to not take any damage, because you'll put the cards back and have cards to draw, and that will result them into basically having to try and force damage through by attacking with things to kind of finish the game off. So hopefully that has helped you understand when you'd want 3, 2, or 1 copies of a given card. And now with all the basics out of the way, let's go ahead and check out the benefits that each leader gets from the certain aspects combo. So first, I like to start off with the double aspect, as this is one that gives you a smaller pool of cards as you sacrifice access to a whole other aspect in order to play these 9 cards without incurring the asset penalty. Now back in set 1, this is only really viable for just one leader in each aspect, and wasn't necessarily the best way to play them or build them. However, now with 3 sets in the game, there are triple the amount of double aspect cards and also cards in all aspects, meaning you can now any leader can go this route in a decent capacity. Now the 9 cards you have for double green are these ones on board, well on screen, sorry I keep saying on board, and we have the first 3 being the ones in the top left, being Krill, Attack Pass and Delta, and Command. Now Krill's a pretty nice one, but he's difficult to leave on board, but with this new set with like little token units and stuff, you can turn into quite a big draw engine by having every unit gain when it's defeated draw a card. So there's little 1/1 draw tokens ramming into your opponent's unit. It allows you to have a like a lot of draw, and even with Wat Tambor's effect focusing on having units leave play so you can give the boost to something else, this would be pretty good for Krill. But with its stats not being the best, and unless you want to put something on to boost him up, like you can technically have him in and then put General's Blade on him to boost him up quite a bit, to make him like an 8/7, but you have to play him out, then wait turn to give him a boost. So you could go for that one if you wanted to. But then we got Attack Pattern, Delta, and Command as the next two events in double green. Now, Attack Pattern Delta allows you to get 3 units boost. Either give it all got to be separate as well. So you can give 3/3 to one, 2/2 to one, and then 1/1 to another. But you got to keep units on board, and those like the only way you're getting like a lot of units out and doing these little token units, which are quite weak. So maybe not the best, and you got Command being a good one because it gives you any 4 options. You can choose 2 of them among them, and pretty nice ones among them to like give experience, ramp, or the other one that mainly uses grab something back from your discard. Pretty good one, and those are pretty nice ones there. The Command probably being the best out of those first 3. Then for set 2, we got the ones in the top right. So these are the new ones that probably aren't the best of what you got. Enterprising Lackeys, which is a pretty good unit to have. A 4 cost 5/5, you can use smuggle it in, so you can always resource it and smuggle it out later. And it's one that can keep you having a unit always in play by when it's defeated, putting it back into your resources by killing one of your resources, which is means you've always got a unit to kind of smuggle out. And it's pretty good stats for its cost as well, and could be a nice one to have the benefit from Wat Tambor as well. Then you got Enforced Loyalty, being a way to kind of defeat your own units by defeating a friendly unit and drawing 2 cards. This costs 2, but then you got to get the unit out before defeating it, and you can always just defeat it easily by just ramming it into your opponent's unit. But then if your opponent doesn't have units on play, you can always defeat it this way as well. Then we got Endless Legion, which is probably not a good card to have at Wat Tambor because you don't really want to go end game wide, and this one's more of a like meme card that like decks have been built around for the meme. Because it's a high costing card at 14 resources, but then allows you to play as many units from your resources as possible, which is pretty cool, but yeah, very meme focused. Then that brings us to the last 3, which are the new ones from this set that Wat Tambor came in, and we have Maz Amada, which is a pretty good one. Like I have almost the same amount of bulk as Poggle, but not the same power. But also has the same thing to kind of give you something whenever units play, because whenever you play another unit, you can rest him, but instead of playing a battle draw token out, you search the top 4 cards of your deck to find a unit and add it. So it kind of keeps you making sure you've got units to play, which is pretty good. It's like be right handy and kind of another benefit. It could be another turn 1 play you can have with Boggle the Lesser to make sure you're getting units out and make sure you got units to keep playing to kind of build a board. Then the other 2 are 2 events, being 3 class events that have some interesting effects. You've got Manufactured Soldiers, being a 3 cost event that allows you to either give you 3 battle droid tokens or 2 clone trooper tokens, which could be useful. So you can get a load of units, that way you've got unit fodder to kind of trigger what for the rest of the turns, but then you're either just getting 2 clone troopers, which are 2 2/2s, or you get 3 battle dragons, which are all 1/1s, which might not be the best. And you got Pyrrhic Assault, which is pretty cool, which is a 3 cost event that makes it for this phase. Each friendly unit gains, when defeated, deal 2 damage to enemy units. You can turn all your little units into little bombs to take out your opponent's units. Now, this probably could be a pretty cool one because you got like Maz Commander being another good turn 1 play to have with Poggle the Lesser, being a way to kind of make sure you've got units to play out by keeping things aboard, gaining advantage. You also got the enforced law to make sure you're popping your own units if you can't ram to your opponents, to kind of make sure you trigger them to trigger Wat Tambor and getting more tools so you can have more cards. And you got some pretty nice units like Krill and Enterprising Lackeys and also Command. So this could be a good one to play with Wat Tambor. Now, and since there's a lot more cards in the Command aspect, you've got a lot more options rather than how it was in set 1. So that's double aspect. Now let's go and check out what cards Wat Tambor has in his own aspects. So for the aspects that Wat Tambor has access to himself, he gives you the command and villainy side of it as well. So we're going to go through first the villainy command stuff, and then the just the command stuff to kind of see what Tambor provides you before we go on to what the base will provide you depending on the aspect. So in the command side, you've got some pretty nice cards, some really nice cards in the villainy side. Like villainy side of some of the aspects are very, very strong. And for command, you've got some really cool ones. Like you've got some early turn plays, like you've got things like Salacious Crumb, you've got Poggle Lesser, Super Laser Technician, and Facy Dark Trooper. These are all really nice early turn units. Like Salacious Crumb giving you a nice little bit of healing to kind of keep your base like a little bit more healthy than it would be, and also allow you to ping some damage by just like tapping and return back to your hand. You also got Poggle Lesser, making that anytime you play a unit every turn, you can kind of get a free Battle Droid token. So you can make use of Wat Tambor's effects by crashing that token into any opponent's units to trigger Wat Tambor to make something else stronger, which is cool. You even have Super Laser Technician as the perfect one you can just kind of ram and get, because then it triggers you a ramp. And also, as you get Wat Tambor out earlier by ramping, and also be another unit that you can have defeated, so that way you can trigger Wat Tambor. And then you've got Phase 3 Dark Trooper. This is pretty cool because he's a Sentinel, forcing your opponent to have to go through him before they go through any of your other units in that same arena or base. Meaning that he's got to be one that needs to be defeated before they can do anything else in that arena or go to your base. Meaning that it'd be easy to trigger Wat Tambor's fire because when he's defeated, you can then boost something else. You also have some later game cards like Darth Vader and Maul, which are pretty strong units, both coming down with ambush attack straight away and being big units that can do a lot of nice things, like Vader being able to put out more than his actual cost of units on board, given his effect, and Maul potentially being able to come down and maybe take no damage by giving something else that's an Underworld card the damage instead that he would take. You also got some pretty nice units events as well, like Everyone Barrage being one of the best events in the game, being the boost up a unit, so in tandem with Wat Tambor, and then spread its power as damage among your opponent's board, and you can set this up for a really strong play on your deploy turn with Wat Tambor as well. And then you've got Palpatine's Return, being able to revive a unit from the discard by making it cost less than normally the cost of itself, so making it cost 6 less that you revive from there, or making it cost 8 less if it's a Force unit. And not only that, you have these bases if you want to go for double green in the rare side, being Entry Lab Droid Manufactory. Droid Manufacturing being able to give you more Battle Droid tokens so you can start ramming them, and also potentially trigger Exploit if you have anything with Exploit, or Education Lab to give you some ambush so you can attack straight away the same turn with a unit once a game. Then with the non-dark sided command, you got some pretty cool ones. So you got Vanguard Infantry, which is one that has a when defeated effect. So if you do ram this into your opponent's units, not only would it trigger Wat Tambor to give another unit a boost, but you can also give that unit an also experience as well. Because when it's defeated, you can give an experience token to a unit. You also got Frontline Shuttle, being another unit to kind of defeat itself without needing to worry about your opponent doing anything. And is in the space that can kind of maybe get out of the way of any like the ground arena to avoid them taking out before you want to. And this also allows you to attack with rested units, but they can't attack bases, but still get more attacks out of rested units, which is quite nice. You got Good More in Retainer as well, being a nice card that if you have another green unit along with him, he becomes Sentinel, forcing your opponent to go through him before, and never way to trigger Wat. And you got Cobb Vanth being one that has a when defeated effect, so you can bring this out, and this also keeps a unit on play, meaning you can always keep something on board to keep board presence. So when defeated, you can look at top 10 cards, and grab anything that's 2 or less among them, any unit that's 2 or less among them, discard it, and then for that phase, you can play it out from the discard for free. So a pretty nice way to keep board presence. Then you've got some nice bigger units as well. You can potentially get bigger benefits, or if you want to get a later game, being Mactoid, Spider Droid, and Reinforcement Walker, both being 8 costs, with Reinforcement Walker allowing you to either on attack or when played, heal your base by discarding the top card of your deck, or by drawing the top card to give you more advantage. And the Spider Droid being an exploit, so trying to trigger, basically be able to trigger Wat Tambor without needing to your opponent to, by crashing the units, by exploiting things, and also having ambush as well, which is pretty cool. Then you also got some nice events. You've got time adventure and be able to play a unit and have an ambush. You have to just play 1 higher than the actual cost of the card, and if you want to smuggle that, you have to play 2 higher, and then resupply as well to kind of use a ramp. So these are some really nice cards you can get for Wat Tambor in his aspects. Now what we're going to do is have a look and see what he gets when you include a base of different aspects. So first of all, we'll start with Vigilance. So if you had a blue base, you can have one of these ones, being Security Complex or Palisades, the rare bases, giving you nice little boosts. And here are some good cards you can have from the dark side of Vigilance. So you got some pretty cheap units, like you got turn 1 plays Inferno 4 and Pike Sentinel, being really nice ones. Inferno 4 having an effect is both 1 play to 1 defeated, so you get a benefit even when you crash at the trigger Wat. And Pike Sentinel being a win to force your opponent to go through and kind of force your opponent to trigger Wat by having them have to go through Pike Sentinel and defeat him before they can attack anything else in that arena or base. So you can have Wat Tambor and trigger something and keep you everything safe. You also have Death Trooper and Grand General Grievous as pretty nice free cost plays, with Death Trooper allowing you to potentially take out 1 units without needing your opponent to do anything, by dealing 2 damage to a friendly unit and then 2 damage to an enemy unit, potentially taking out 2 units, one being yours, one being your opponent's, and then being able to trigger to help trigger Wat. And in Jungle Reaver's just being a very strong strong statted free cost as well. You don't really worry about any of these effects because they're all about lightsabers, and you got to put a lot of lightsabers on, which isn't worth it. It's just more stats with its cost is really good. You then got some more like a little bit higher costing units like Morgan Elsbeth, Gideon Hask, and Droidica Sentry or Security, which are more units you can play. So like Morgan Elsbeth is a really nice one in that is another way to not rely on your opponent or opponent having units to kind of trigger Wat's effect, because when she's attacked you can defeat another unit to draw a card, and by defeating another friendly unit you then go ahead and trigger Wat. So that's pretty cool, and also offers you restore 1, so you get a bit of healing. Gideon's a nice one where if you take out your opponent's units, then you get more experience on your friendly units to give you like the unit where you want to keep boosting with Wat, extra experience. And Droidica having exploits, it can be a way to trigger the defeating your friendly units by using exploit to trigger Wat as well. Then you also have Power Dark Side being some nice events. You get nice cool events in the Dark Side of Blue as well, like Power Dark Side forcing your opponent to kill off one of their units, which is pretty cool. Then in the non-dark side of Vigilance, you got some pretty nice ones, but not too many fantastic events. Now you've got the vanilla bases, which I got 2 that I like here, being Dagobah Swamp and the Crystal City. Then you got some pretty nice cards. You got some units like Kimadi is a pretty nice one to help you get more draws, which is pretty cool. You also got Multi-Troop Transport, which can keep 1 its attack, also be a way to trigger Wat Tambor with its exploit. And also, every time it attacks, create a battle token, so then you've got a token to then trigger Wat Tambor during every turn after that. You also got Roger, so if you go for a token spam deck, you can have Roger, so you can keep giving your token, like make this jump between tokens by every time the token's defeated, put on a new token, and if you can keep a load of tokens on board, you can keep bouncing around while crashing and then triggering Wat's effect as well. You also got Entrenched being a big up unit, and either make an opponent's unit not be able to attack bases, or make 1 unit that's bigger so it can clear the board, which is pretty nice. Then you got some pretty nice events. Like you've got Grievous Assembly being like a heal, being like the Separatist kind of version of the Forces With Me, where you can heal free from a unit, but rather than being like the other one where if you've got a force unit, move it over, you create a battle token, which is never a cheap token. So you're healing up a unit that you want to keep around, and then getting a token that you can then easily defeat a little bit easier to then trigger Wat's effect. You also have Make an Opening, the weaken stuffing and heal your base for damage, and you got removal events like Take Down a Fellow Dragon to just take out certain units. So blue is a pretty nice one. It's more like blue is a very good combination with green in the dark side, but it's like mainly how it's been used is more for control decks, being a good way to control because of some very powerful stuff in the dark side for focusing on control. But there are a good amount of low cost units, so you can go a bit more aggressive, more like small unit size, less control-y, more aggro with Wat Tambor if you wanted to. So that's Vigilance, a very good way to play, and then we'll go on to the next one. And if you go for a red base, we've got Aggression. So the Aggression is very good with throwing out damage willy-nilly on an event, among units. And if you want to go for a rare base for Aggression, you've got Tarkin Town and Shadow Collector Camp. So Tarkin Town can help you finish off a non-leader unit that you were just shy of defeating, or Shadow Collector Camp can help you draw cards depending on what you want. Now, For units, you got some pretty nice one in the dark side. You got some pretty cheap ones. Like you got Death Stormtrooper is a very cheap unit, and you got some also kind of Tide Silencer, being never one you can play turn one that has very good stats but quite fragile, so you can kind of force it to is easier to kill the trigger one. You got some pretty nice free costs as well, like B1 attack platform being a big power unit but very weak, so it's never one that's easy to defeat the trigger one, or a benefit of Wat as well by just boosting him up so he becomes a 7/4, which is pretty strong. And you got a way to kind of prevent your opponent to heal bases by Confederate Tri-Fighter, being a nice free unit that makes it bases can't be healed. So if your opponent's trying to heal, this prevents them, so you can keep being aggressive if you go for that route. Then you've got some higher costing units in like Asajj Ventress and Darth Maul, which pretty nice units, like Darth Maul being able to attack 2 units at the same time. Pretty good to manage units, and also Asajj Ventress being able to would exploit the trigger, defeating a unit to trigger Wat, and also getting a bit more powerful when she attacks as well. And you can potentially play her out completely for free by defeating units and then trigger stuff as well. Also, you got some nice events as well. Like you got Given to Your Anger, which probably has a good way for Wat, because it's a 1-cost event that allows you to deal 1 damage to an enemy unit, and then the controller of that unit then has to attack with the next action for that turn has to be to attack with that specific unit, and then if they can attack into a unit, they have to. So literally, you ping a damage to a unit, and the opponent is forced to attack with that unit for the next action. And if you've got a unit, they've got to attack it. If you've got a unit on board that they can attack into, they have to do that. So you've got nice ways to kind of force your opponent to into a specific action, maybe run into one of your units, so that way you can maybe trigger Wat. And you also got Force Choke as well to be a nice way to remove non-vehicle units. But doing 5 damage, they do get the draw card if it's your opponent, or whoever the unit is, they get the draw card, which means you're going to be your opponent, but it's a nice cheap way to kind of remove things, and 5 damage is quite big. Then next we've got the non-dark side aggression that you got the other kind of bases you can run, the vanilla bases, being Spice Mines and KCM Mine Factory, which I quite like the art of. And here you've got some pretty nice units you can play. You've got like cheaper ones like Wolf and Saving Fangfire to give you specific kind of things, like Wolf preventing bases being healed when it's played on attack, being able to like make it live whenever you want, unlike the Tri-Fighter, which is always live. You got Fangfire being able to like knock off upgrades off units, which is pretty cool, very handy, and more like a sidewalk one. You got some forecasts like Relentless Rocket Droid and Heavy, which give you benefits, because if you go for token units to kind of help you trigger Wat's easier, then Reckless Rocket Droid gets boosted to a 5/5, because those all token units are troopers. And then you also got Heavy as well, which if you get more units on board, it gains raid too at solid stats. But also when defeated, can actually deal damage to each enemy ground unit. Kind of have that benefit there as well, being a big unit that can benefit more from Wat. And then you got Heavy Persuader Tank being another unit you can exploit in the trigger Wat, and also being a pretty big unit. You also got some nice benefits as well, like Precision Fire being a nice event that you can benefit from for all the token units that have Trooper. And you got Raid there and Raid as well, being a way to ping damage over basal units. And then you also got Arm to the Teeth being an upgrade you put on a unit, which then, when it attacks, gives another unit +2 power, so adding to Watts. So you put this on Wat, Watts then swinging as a 5/6, and then giving a unit, as long as something was defeated, an extra 4/2 rather than just 2/2, which is pretty nice. So you want to go for a more aggressive, like more like aggro, or more like damage focus, then aggression could be a very good one to play. That then brings us to the last aspect, being Cunning, which we have the rare bases. Now, rare bases for yellow aren't the best. Petronaki Arena could be alright, but yeah, they're not the best. Like Jesse's not really used. The time I've seen it used is in Kylo, and that's normally to make it so their cheap units they've been just throwing out are less, are a bit more protected, and they can't really be taken out, while also clearing board if needed. And you got some pretty nice ones in here. And you got like Bazim being a very good one, a nice unit you can bring out and just basically just trying to throw away into every unit, while also providing you with hand control as well by giving you hand knowledge, and also discarding card out your opponent's hand you don't want them to have. You then got some good 4 units like Rush Clovis, Infiltrating Demolisher, and Forlom. Rush Clovis allow you to get those little potentially like hit hard, and also get you those battle droid tokens potentially to help you have something cheap to, well, basically just have something to trigger Wat. You have Infiltrating Demolisher, unit you can put out is pretty strong, and also triggering Wat. And then Forlorn giving you that nice little ambush to come down, like Control Bomber takes something out, and then being weakened by by taking damage from whatever it ambushes. So that way you've got him as a unit that they probably want to take out to avoid you from doing it again, or one that then ram and trigger Wat. You've got Sandhill as well, which kind of benefits from you needing to defeat one of your resources while you're running units, because you can exploit it out and everybody trigger Wat. And then anytime it attacks, for every unit, friendly unit was defeated this phase, you can ready a resource. You can kind of untap things, giving that like Boba-esque effect. Now that Boba's gone. You also got some nice events. So you got No Good to Be Dead, locking things down. Triple Dark Raid, be able to bring out some vehicle units, cheaper for the top 7 cards of your deck. And then you can either have them defeated by if you get out a weak one to come out, or by getting they go back to your hand so you can play them again next turn. So you got some good benefits to that, because it's pretty nice space units in the dynamic side. And you got On the Doorstep, allowing you to, for 4, get a free battle for tokens. They come ready, so you can start random straight away trigger Wat, and then even be sacked off Sandhill. So like if you got 3 units in play, well yeah, because you get 3, you can round 1. Then you can use Wat to go ahead and boost 1, then deploy, swing, boost another one, and then swing with those 2 other units for another like basically 6 damage for having that, because they'd both be 3/3, or make one a 5/5, which is pretty cool to like push some damage and make good use of Wat Tambor's flip effect as well. Well, deploy, sorry. So that's the dark side, and in the non-dark side, you got some pretty nice units. You got like Greedo, Cloud Rider, B1 security team, and some pretty cheap turn 1 units that are all very fragile, only 1 health, but quack by a punch. They all are 3/1 units with different costs. So like Greedo has a benefit when defeated, potentially deal 2 damage if it mills the top card of your deck and it's not a unit. Cloud Rider comes down, ambush straight away to trigger up Wat. So whatever you play turn 1, if you play this turn 3 onward, 2 onwards, you can then boost whatever that unit is you play turn 1. And you got B1 security team forcing your opponent to go into it because of Sentinel to then trigger Wat. You also had Hidden Sharpshooter as well. So Hidden Sharpshooter as a ambush unit you can put on the trigger, as with its low health it could potentially be defeated, but also taking out opponent's unit as well. So like trading, so you can then boost whatever you've played the turns before. And Tri-Droid's Suppressor being another one that can exploit to trigger Wat, and also be a big unit to get the benefit of Wat as well. Then you also got some pretty nice events in Cunning as well. You got Political Pressure being a good turn 1, allowing you to choose an opponent. They either got discard a random card from hand, which on the first turn isn't something you might want to do, having like reduced cards, or give you 2 Battle tokens, and those 2 tokens are then going to be your like little fodder to help trigger Wat every turn after that. You also got Surprise Strike, so once you've given the boost to units, so if you do that deploy boost and give a unit plus 4/4, thanks to Wat getting the double boost from when he deploys, you can then use Surprise Attack or Surprise Strike, then attack with that same unit, give an extra 3 power for that swing to get a huge swing as well with it, so a nice little extra to that. And you got now there are 2 of them to turn whatever you play on the first turn, potentially on the second turn, into a bigger version of that trait. So it's a nice way to get bigger things out, so you can kind of have something bigger and better to benefit from Wat's effect to get boosts. So Cunning is a pretty nice way to play as well, and pretty nice when also you got these 30 health bases that just nicer art. So that is Cunning. And lastly, we're going to go over the Villainy cards, because they're pretty nice Villainy cards. These are the ones that I feel like get best benefit from Wat. You got Cell Block Guardian, Never Sentinel, just like with the Phase 3 Dark Trooper, where they've got to go through it, and he's got good stats to do some good damage and force your opponent to have to attack into it. And you got Blacks and Sunfire, which does the same thing but in the space arena, but a little bit weaker, so it's easier to be taken out the trigger Wat. You also got Battle Droid Escort, which not only comes down to very cheap units, very easy to kind of just crash and force the opponent's unit and make sure it dies to trigger Wat, but it also gives you Battle Droid tokens when it's played and when it's defeated to keep those tokens on play, so that way Wat will then have something to force the trigger of its effect. Same thing, you can have for turn 1 if you don't have the Boggle Lesser and stuff like that, is Droid Deployment, getting you 2 Battle Droid tokens. And you got Merciless Contents, making both you and your opponent choose a non-leader unit to control defeat those units. So it could be a good way to kind of force your opponent to defeat one of their units, and then defeat one of your own units, mainly a token, so that way you can trigger Wat to boost up something else. So some pretty cool units there. Well, pretty cool cards with Villainy to help trigger Wat. Now that brings me to the last bit of the video, the last part, and the end of it being what my preferred aspects are, because like I've had in my previous series of this, for every sets, Sometimes I have people ask about what my preferred aspects are for any given leader, and I thought I'd just put this in for all the set 3 leaders because it's nice to kind of see what people might prefer, because you might be still stuck with like, all these are all different nice choices, don't know where to start off to. And with my preferred aspects, I prefer with Wat to go into blue, so go for a blue base with Wat to go into the blue aspects, because you've got nice things like Pike Sentinel, multi-troop transport to kind of have a way to trigger, like get units to kind of trigger Wat, and then Morgan Elspeth as well to kind of trigger defeating them. So you can get like multi-troop transport to get battle droid tokens out, so you can have something for Wat to have for a trigger's effect, and then Morgan Elspeth to then defeat those little tokens you make to then trigger Wat, so he's boosting up something else as well. It's a pretty nice thing there. And also, I would probably go the Cunning as well if I wasn't going in the blue, because like I said, you've got ways to make tokens like political pressure, and on doorstep, you're able to get tokens out, and also make them a bit of a hassle. Like on the doorstep, be able to use them straight away to trigger Wat, and then political pressure, be able to potentially either reduce your opponent's hand size, or let them give you those tokens. And then Sandhill, be able to exploit and trigger, and also make use of the fact you're defeating your own units to trigger Wat. So you can, like have something defeated, and then have Sandhill on the board, defeat something. Wat gives a boost to Sandhill, making him, I think he's a 5-3, 5-7, or a 4-7, but boosts him even more. So he's then hitting harder and giving you resources back as well, so you can do more things. It's pretty nice there. And that brings us to the end of the video. So that is Wat Tambor, and he does look pretty fun. I probably will try him out, because I'm more focused. There's certain leaders I want to try out, but then given that we've got for the rest of this year now a nice little rest from competitive, because the next Planetary qualifiers aren't going to be until January. We can just rest and relax, even do some showdowns, and just try out all the different leaders in here before we go on to the competitive next competitive season in January. So that is it for me today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and remember to stay tuned and check out Captain Rex that comes out tomorrow. Bye for now.
Like a boss.